everyone else involved in organizing this panel discussion. I would like to thank you for your presence and, of course, your willingness to participate in today's insightful conversation. As advancements in technology continue to revolutionize healthcare, digital solutions have emerged as powerful tools for diagnosing and treating neurological conditions. In today's panel discussion on what can digital diagnosis and digital therapeutics can tell us about the brain, insights from industry, we will explore the latest innovations in digital diagnosis and therapeutics and delve into the insights they provide about the complexities of the human brain. Our esteemed panelists from leading industry organizations will share their expertise and perspectives on how these digital tools are reshaping our understanding of brain health and paving the way for more effective interventions. Before we dive into the discussions, I would like to cover a few housekeeping details. This event is sponsored by the Hariri Institute Digital Health Innovation Award for a focused research program titled Novel Data Science and AI Approaches for Brain Health and Brain Disease, and it's co-sponsored by the Center for Brain Recovery. The upcoming hour will feature speaker introductions and a Q&A session, which will be moderated by Awad, Associate Professor here at Boston University, Department of Physical Therapy, and myself. And we've prepared the list of core questions to guide our discussion, but we'll also reserve some time towards the end for questions from the audience. From 5 to 6, we'll transition to a reception and networking opportunity. Finally, please note that this event is being recorded, and the link to the recording will be circulated after the event. Additionally, it will be posted on our social media channels for those who were not able to join us live.
Okay, welcome everyone to today's event. It is my pleasure to moderate this panel of very accomplished individuals. As Maria mentioned, the panel is going to begin with introductions of each of the panelists one by one. And after I introduce the panelists, I'm going to ask them to speak for 5 minutes about their company and the products that they are developing. And then we're going to move on to the next panelist. And we will keep some time at the end for questions from the audience. All right. So our first panelist is Dr. Veera Anantha. Dr. Anantha is the CEO and co-founder of Constant Therapy Health. He is a hands-on technology executive and business leader with a passion to bring positive change through the power of data and artificial intelligence. Dr. Anantha's team has built and commercialized an award-winning mobile app that uses artificial intelligence to help tens of thousands of people living with neurological conditions regain essential life skills. Dr. Anantha's track record includes successfully building a number of innovative products at multiple startups, including the world's fastest digital signal processor, which was acquired by Apple. He began his career as a lead engineer at Motorola, developing mobile software and hardware products, and later served as vice president of engineering at a startup that was ultimately acquired by Motorola. There, he developed software products that are now used worldwide to manage wireless networks. Dr. Anantha has 6 technology patents and was recently named Boston's Entrepreneur of the Year. He is an expert mentor at the Mass Challenge Health Tech and Insight Data Sciences, is a charter member of TIE Boston, and is a guest lecturer for entrepreneurship at the Questrom School of Business. Dr. Anantha holds a PhD in electrical and computer engineering and a master's degree in physics from Northwestern University, as well as a bachelor's degree from the Indian Institute of Technology in Bombay. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Anantha. So for the next 5 minutes or so, please tell us about Constant Therapy Health and its products.
Thanks for that. Thanks for the intro. And it is a beautiful day to be here in this, in this room, overlooking the river here. So Constant Therapy is a Boston-based company. In fact, has its some of its roots here, right here at Boston University. We have developed a program that digitally delivers speech, language, and cognitive therapy to patients that can be used anytime and anywhere. So the way the program works is patients can download our app or on any kind of a digital device and really get the kind of therapy that they would have gotten with an expert clinician, but they can do that, at their own time. So, as an example, patients with a stroke or who have had a stroke or any other type of brain injury, internal or external, might need to go see a neurologist, speech language pathologist, or an occupational therapist to be able to get this type of therapy instead. In addition to what they might be able to do with their clinicians, they are also able to do um, or continue that type of therapy on their own in for as long as they need it. So thus far, we've delivered through our platform over 260 million exercises to patients, mostly in the US. We are actually just got back from India last night. We are in the process of launching it in other countries over the next, few months. The program has been quite successful in the US. Primarily because we are using AI to really enable patients to succeed on their own and gain their independence. We've also partnered with many health systems, mostly in the U.S. Organizations like the Mass General of the world that are right here in Boston, but also with other organizations across the U.S. such as Kaiser and Compass Health and others, to really be able to deliver this type of therapy at scale through the healthcare institutions. That's been one of the key aspects to making sure that the program is adopted and also continues to deliver the right kind of care to patients. Um, and we'll hopefully get into a lot more details when we get into questions.
All right. Thank you very much. Yeah. So our second panelist is Dr. David Bates. Dr. Bates is the CEO and co-founder of Linus Health. He is a scientist, engineer, inventor, entrepreneur, and investor. He was a founding partner of Tamarisk Ventures, and he co-founded Bode, a technology-enabled hospitality company for group travel. Dr. Bates currently serves on the board of several technology companies, as well as the philanthropic TM City Foundation. He's held positions at multiple other institutions, including Morningside Ventures, F-Wave, Harvard Medical School, MGH, and the University of Louisville, and Georgia Tech. His training includes a PhD in chemical materials engineering from the University of Auckland and bachelor's and master's degrees in applied biology from the Georgia Institute of Technology. He currently resides in Boston with his wife and kids. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Bates.
Thank you. So here today to talk about Linus Health, and I agree it's a beautiful view from up here. So Linus Health is a mission-oriented company, even though it's for profit. And our mission is to help bring brain health into its rightful place in the global standard of care and make it accessible to everyone. And we think that is the real highest and best use of technology, and that is to give everyone equal access to the best that science and medicine have to offer. And so at Linus Health, our first indication that we're focused on is Alzheimer's or mild cognitive impairment and dementia. And what is unique about our platform, and I guess why I'm invited to be on the panel, is we leverage smart devices and software and machine learning to generate algorithms that are very precise in understanding brain function. And the approach, I think that what makes us unique was actually the analog was developed here in Boston by a neuropsychologist named Edith Kaplan, who was at the Boston VA, and a cognitive neurologist named Norman Gushwind from Beth Israel. And they came up with what is known as the Boston process approach, wherein They said, by analyzing the patient carrying out the task, it's more informative than the output of the task itself. And that really is what makes specialists unique. They use their biological sensors to observe, in all their training, they observe someone and their behaviors. How are they talking? What's the prosody of their voice? What's the articulatory precision? How's their eyes moving? How's their sentiment? How's their gait and balance? How is they functioning? Is there any tremor or anything? And their brain builds basically a math model based on those sensory inputs. And they've just seen so many cases that they develop this pattern recognition, and they can be right 70 to 80% of the time versus 55% of the time in primary care about what the patient has. And so we take this same methodology and we package it into a smart device, like an iPad or even a smartphone, and we activate the sensor array. And so we are analyzing the patient's behavior over time. So it's time series data across multiple sensors. And that enables us to develop basically machine learning derived digital antibodies of brain function. And so in just 3 minutes on interaction with our iPad, doing a standard neuropsychological assessment or some kind of interaction, we're sampling across those sensors at 120 to 240 hertz. So to the machine, that second is about 3 minutes. So it slows down time as the person is interacting with the device. And so we can get very exquisite information in a short period of time that's highly accurate on brain function. And then we marry that with the best that medicine has to offer about what is going on with the individual. Is it a dysexecutive cognitive impairment? Is it an amnestic impairment? Is it a mixed impairment? Do they have motor? Is it potentially diffuse Lewy bodies with Parkinson's? And that enables, in a short period of time, clinical action and to put people on a pathway. And we leverage clinical decision support to rule out other causes. Many times they have impairment, but it's not due necessarily to neurodegenerative disease. It's due to their medications. It's due to obstructive sleep apnea. It's due to depression. And we help clinicians sort that out so that we get people on the right path as expeditiously as possible. And so before I go further down that path, I'll just lastly frame the macro situation in healthcare today, which is something that most people don't like to talk about, and that is we are rationing healthcare because simply the demand far exceeds the supply, and price can no longer be leveraged to mitigate demand. And what is the supply that's constrained? That is the neurospecialist. There will never be enough to meet the increasing demand of need for chronic care services, specialized services in brain health. And so when you have that kind of demand and the constrained supply, you can't leverage price, wait times ensue. And when you have a neurodegenerative disease, wait times are the enemy because neurons lost is increased cost and neurons, time is brain. It doesn't come back. So currently, with the emergence of a new therapy for Alzheimer's disease and 150 more behind it, we have this dementia care pathway currently globally. And what that means is wait until the symptoms manifest and then send them to the specialist, which is a terrible strategy because you don't get that function back and quality of life deteriorates, independence is lost, and the whole family is affected. So we have to move the conversation upstream to identify very early with specialist level insights in the hands of low-cost resources what's going on at the earliest site of wobble and get those people on the right path so that we preserve their brain. And this is the real value of AI, of software, is to take those skill sets, put them in the box, and scale it so that everyone can access it at a low cost and at the very earliest stages. This will lead to preservation of independence, preservation of quality of life, and that's what we're committed to at Linus Health.
Thank you, Dr. Bates. Can't wait for the Q&A period. All right, so our third panelist is Mr. Gill. Mr. Gill is the Chief Executive Officer of Verisense Health. Before assuming that role, he was president of Shimmer Americas. Verisense is a spinoff of Shimmer. While at Shimmer, Mr. Gill's primary role was as a member of the global management team. His particular focus was on business and product strategy for the consumer neuroscience and medical markets. Prior to his work at Shimmer, Mr. Gill performed a wide variety of roles at Interscope Research, a leading consumer neuroscience company, and most recently served as its Chief Financial Officer and Senior Vice President of Operations. His other experiences include serving as the Vice President of Research and Development for Bayer Diagnostics Critical Care Division and Global Market Manager at Weidman Electrical Technology. Mr. Gill has degrees in applied math and physics from Harvard University and a master's in management of technology from the MIT Sloan School of Management. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Gill.
Well, I have to say I'm a little intimidated, not only by the view, but by the esteemed people next to me. I'm not a PhD, but I am really focused on implementation. And I'm actually a serial entrepreneur. This is my 5th company, depending on how you count them. And what I'm really, we spun Verisense Health off of Shimmer because we really feel like digital health needs to be accelerated. And let me talk about the potential of digital health. The potential of digital health is incredible. It's one of the very few ways that you can actually take significant cost and time out of clinical trials. You can manage people's diseases better and potentially prevent things like falls or readmittances to hospitals with chronic heart failure. And as David was mentioning, potential to identify disease earlier when you can actually do something about it. So it's incredible. And I'll give you just one example out of clinical trials. There's a company called Veera. They were able to take about $200 million worth of cost savings on a $1.5 million investment by using a digital clinical endpoint in their pivotal trial. So that's the good news. The bad news is they're actually the only one. So you have a over 100-fold return on investment, and yet only one company's been able to do it. And so we're focused on trying to help that problem. We're doing it in really 3 ways. One is that we're dramatically reducing the cost of acquiring this digital health data. We've established something called the Digital Health Panel, and we also are sourcing watches differently. We're working with manufacturers to customize low-cost watches to get the incredible data at a much lower cost. So to give you a specific example, the watch I'm wearing is one that we've worked with the manufacturer to customize. We can provide this for under $100. Comparable watches used in research are in the $1,500 to $2,000. So taking a factor of 10 out of the cost is important. The other thing that we're doing is we're trying to aggregate data. At Shimmer Research, our bread and butter was selling wearable sensors to researchers to develop algorithms to do things. There are literally thousands of studies done every year examining this, and many of them are required to make their data public. However, you have 50 people here, 75 there. It's done in this piecemeal fashion. Trying to get all that and combine it is impossible. We're trying to handle that problem by creating what we call a digital biobank. If you think about biobanks, they're very commonly used, and there's been so much work on genomics and connecting it with outcomes. I mean, if you think about it, genomics is kind of like nature, and they're missing this whole thing about how are you nurturing? What is your activity like? How are you progressing? And so we're trying to address that and create a data set that everyone will be able to access. Finally, we're also, based on the fact that we have the infrastructure to collect and manage the data, which is very tough, and also the knowledge from this biobank and collecting this data, we feel that we'll be able to help organizations actually implement digital health. It's a real paradigm shift. I mean, today what's happening is, you go to your doctor every year or something, and they look at you and say, "Oh, that's great." Or, even if you're under care for something, maybe it's once a month or whatever. We're talking about replacing that with huge amounts of continuous data to really understand what's happening to that person. However, you got multiple problems within our current structure. First of all, it's not set up to just take that data stream. Secondly, well, what do you do with it? The doctors and providers can't possibly analyze all that data. And so what you need to do is figure out how to manage that data stream. And we feel that that's going to be something that unique companies will be able to do, new companies, and that's where we want to go. And so that's our plan in terms of doing that. We are a relatively new company. We spun off of Shimmer last year, so and just introduced our watch a couple of months ago. So stay tuned and look forward to hearing the other panelists. Please go ahead.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Mr. Gill. Okay, so our fourth panelist is Dr. Shaun Patel. Dr. Patel is the co-founder and CEO of React Neuro, a digital health company that's leveraging virtual reality and machine learning to reimagine the way that we assess and treat brain health from the comfort of your home. Dr. Patel is a neuroscientist, an entrepreneur, and investor. He's also the founding general partner of DRADS Capital, which is a Boston and British Columbia-based venture capital fund that's focused on disruptive technologies in healthcare, energy, and technology. Prior, he was a faculty member at Harvard Medical School and MGH, where he pioneered some of the earliest studies, reading and writing the neural code in awake and behaving human subjects who are undergoing deep brain stimulation surgery. Dr. Patel has graduate degrees in medical sciences, neuroscience, and machine learning from Boston University School of Medicine, go BU, and Harvard Medical School. And in his spare time, he is a pilot and avid aviation enthusiast who cruises around New England at 5,000 feet. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Patel.
Thank you. It's really great to be here to talk about such an awesome topic. And we're not quite at 5,000 feet, but it looks really similar. And you can actually kind of fly down. There's a special route you can fly down the Charles River, which is extra special. So React is a digital health platform. As you heard, we specifically focus on virtual reality. And this was an observation we had through doing these experiments in the operating room, where we'd uniquely have these electrodes. You could think of it as the ultimate digital health tool, because you had these electrodes directly listening to the brain. You get as much information, perhaps too much, to figure out what's going on. And what we discovered, I think as noted by the other panelists, is that in reality, we live very reactively for our brain health. Today we're kind of at an interesting precipice where, you go to your annual physical wellness visit and you get all these numbers, your weight, your blood pressure, your cholesterol, and you leave feeling healthy or not. But if you think about it, all those numbers are really just focused on your heart health. And nothing really is measured about your brain. As our co-founder, Rudy Tanzi, likes to say, there's no checkup from the neck up. And so that observation was really striking to us. We were sitting in the lab doing these experiments, and one day we come outside of the lab and we talk to people and we realize, hey, we're really living in the Stone Age when it comes to our brain. So what would be the ideal solution to that? And the ideal solution, in our opinion, has to do with the fundamental structure of the problem. If you think of your heart as an analogy, your heart clearly is very important, but it primarily does one main thing, just pump blood through our body. And so the scope of that problem from a technical and engineering perspective is well suited. The brain, on the other hand, is a little different. It does so many different things for us. And as a result of that complexity, I think it's historically been quite hard to characterize and quantify. We're used to these really rudimentary paper-based or interview or longitudinally lacking measurements, and therefore we've just kind of ignored it, and here we are. Virtual reality, in our opinion, is kind of interesting. Most of the world thinks of it as a blood-brain or as a gaming interface, but really we think of it as the best brain-machine interface, namely because it delivers information to your brain in exactly the way your brain has developed to perceive it. So if you kind of turn your head and bend your nose and you look up and down, your brain knows exactly what it's seeing, which is also why it's such an amazing gaming interface, which turns out to be super handy when you're trying to get people to do assessments or therapies, because engagement is probably the #1 most important thing. And so we're the beneficiaries of billions of dollars spent by the gaming industry of building this amazing gaming tool. But to us, we think it's the world's best healthcare tool. It will allow us to democratize brain health to everyone comfortably in their home using this marvelous technology. And we do so because they're incredibly sensor rich. Eye tracking, we can capture your voice, vocal biomarkers and language, head and body movements, 6 degrees of freedom, sub-millimeter accuracy. It's as good almost as you can get without putting an electrode in your brain. And that was the magic and insight that we had. React is developed as this platform. We have over 50 different experiences that measure all the variety of things your brain can do, from a full vision and auditory assessment to cognitive assessments, mood, balance, and more. And on the other half of the platform, we have these digital therapeutics, these traditional games designed, serious games as we call them, for specific purposes, perhaps to rehabilitate ocular motor function after a concussion, or upper limb function after a stroke, or improve cognitive resiliency and improve attention, memory, processing speed, all these wonderful things our brain can do through these fun, immersive gaming experiences. And all of that's kind of baked into this system that, today is not as common as we hope it will be in the future, but could arrive at your door, be used and sent back into the system to avoid those long-waited wait times that we've just heard about. It takes about 9 months to get an appointment with a cognitive psychologist or neurologist here at MGH or down in Longwood. And if you're talking about migraines and other things, it's even longer. So we hope that these technologies can really begin to change the way we access healthcare, because it is going to be something that will ultimately lead us down a path that improves the longevity of everyone.
All right. I want to take this moment to remind everyone that after our first hour, there will be an hour of networking and discussion. So if there's a panelist that you want to grab afterwards, don't forget, stick around for the next hour. All right, so our final panelist, certainly not least, is Ms. Jennifer Lavanture. Ms. Lavanture is the Vice President of Business Development and Corporate Strategy at MedRhythms, where she drives partnership strategy and execution for MedRhythms' entire platform and pipeline. In her role, she leads the partner identification and evaluation process and negotiates deals all the way through to closure. This includes leading MedRhythms partnerships with technology and commercialization partners, as well as biotech and pharma collaborators. She also leads alliance management and internal portfolio management functions at MedRhythms. Prior to joining MedRhythms, Ms. Lavanture served as the Associate Director of Business Development at Rhodes Pharmaceuticals, where she led internal portfolio and product selection activities. While at Rhodes, she executed numerous co-development, licensing, and distribution deals. And prior to her time at Rhodes, she served as the Director of Business Development and Portfolio at Putney, where she led the portfolio product selection process. Ms. Lavanture began her professional career in the biopharma industry with DRG, formerly known as PharmaStrat, with focus on market access, pricing, and reimbursement consulting. And her education includes degrees in business economics and Japanese from Lehigh University. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Lavanture.
Thank you. And from my bio, I think similar to Mr. Gill on the panel here, I'm not a scientist or a technologist. I'm an economist by academic background, but very focused on strategy, development approaches, and go-to-market approaches for novel technologies, be those drugs, devices, digital technologies as well. A bit about MedRhythms. Maybe I'll start with our origin story. It was, I think, like one of my colleagues here on the panel, also an analog origin story. Our co-founder and CEO actually established the neurologic music therapy program at Spalding Rehabilitation Hospital, which is the MGB rehab hospital here in Boston. And neurologic music therapy is an emerging discipline of rehabilitation interventions that leverages advanced understanding of neuroscience of music to actually deliver interventions to improve range of motor and cognitive function in neurologic injury and neurodegenerative disease. And Brian and a team of therapists who were working at Spalding were seeing these really incredible results when they were treating patients in inpatient and outpatient settings, but we're often being confronted with the very difficult conversation of how do I continue to access this care as I'm transitioning to an outpatient environment, a community environment, a home environment. And it was a really unsatisfactory answer because there were so few clinicians trained in these interventions. Brian's one of, I think, 300 in the United States with advanced training and application in the neuroscience of music. And so that really led us to the genesis of our technology platform, which was, how can we scale this and be able to meet this substantial unmet need in a robust and systematic way. And so we've developed at MedRhythms a technology platform that leverages software, sensors, and music to deliver interventions that rely on a mechanism of action known as auditory motor entrainment to use those as the basis for systematic interventions. We're right now really focused on improvement of walking in neurologic injury and neurodegenerative disease. We have a pipeline of products in a range of conditions, some of them that are more familiar: multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's disease, stroke rehabilitation, also some more rare diseases, functional neurologic disorder, working on a product now for neuromyelitis optica spectrum disorder, or NMO. But have really been focused on how we can build this technology platform to meet and serve unmet needs. Have a little bit on our platform. So we have sensors that collect real-time gait biomechanic information. We get about 40 data points for every stride. Those feed into an closed-loop fashion into software algorithms that are assessing in real time how someone's walking in that moment. And then we actually modify auditory stimulus that's delivered in the form of user-preferred music to deliver interventions. And one point here, from the sort of the partnerships side, a highlight, and something I didn't think I would ever necessarily personally be doing is actually worked to secure a deal with Universal Music Group. So we have access to the world's richest and most culturally diverse catalog of music. It's about 50% of the global music catalog that we can deploy throughout our platform. So that was been, a new thing for me, getting to learn the inner workings of the music industry as well, coming from a healthcare background. But so, we've been undertaking clinical trials across our platform. And, most recently, our flagship asset for chronic stroke gait rehabilitation received FDA market authorization mid-year last year. Pivotal clinical trials for that, as well as usability studies, are now published, and products been in market since late Q4. And in that, we found in randomized controlled trials, we were able to improve walking in people who were on average 8 years post-stroke by 22% and converted about 50% from limited community ambulators to community ambulators. So, very excited to have our chronic stroke product on market, and looking forward to continuing to advance the rest of our portfolio through FDA process to commercialization.
Thank you, Jen. It just strikes me hearing the different panelists. We're here under the broad umbrella of digital diagnostics and therapeutics, and yet there's such a diversity in the approaches that are being taken to leverage digital tools to augment and enhance care. And so with that, we're going to move into the question and answer period. There are a couple of pre-prepared questions. We have some questions submitted from registrants prior to the event. And if we have some time at the end, depending on the answers, we'll take more questions. But don't forget, you can talk to the panelists and amongst yourselves at our event after this panel. So with that, I'm going to pass it on to my co-moderator, Maria, who's going to take the first question.
Okay. So what are the biggest lessons, scientific or commercial, you have learned through the process of developing and commercializing your products?
Well, too many actually to talk about in a short period of time. But one of the things. So there's the scientific and the commercial. The first thing I'll say is that we've discovered through this process is, you can have when you're talking about healthcare, and in this, in our case, it's digital health, digital therapeutics. You want to build a product that is going to be effective, clinically effective for patients. So there's a lot of effort and time that goes into making that happen, and it does. It's not an easy thing to do, because it takes a lot of time and investment to prove technology out. Having said that, the process of doing that is critically important for the products like Constant Therapy and others here. In our case, the approach we took is strong partnership with in terms of clinical validation, strong partnership with researchers at places like Boston University and other organizations like the VA. We were fortunate to have several clinical researchers who had an active interest in working with our platform to run clinical trials to show its efficacy. In pretty much all cases, we found that the program was effective and also was creating a lot of engagement with patients. But the biggest lesson there is, it just takes a lot of time and patience to make that happen. Now, having said all of that, a lot of times what happens, and we've seen this, and I'm sure others on the panel here would agree with this, is the amount of time it takes to do the clinical validation oftentimes can lead to a situation where you want to also make sure that the program is commercially viable, and that second part is not easy either. And in fact, I would argue that that's actually much more difficult than the first part, the clinical validation. At the end of the day, 0 times 0, 100 times 0 is going to be still 0. That is, you can have the most effective product, but if people are not going to engage with it and use it, and it's not commercially viable, meaning somebody's not there to pay for it, it's not going to really have the kind of impact that we all dream about, when you're starting something like this. So on the commercial side, we have actually taken a pretty interesting path there. The path we've taken is one where while we were doing while we were building up the clinical evidence, we decided actually early on that we would bet on, we would make sure that the program was extremely usable for the kind of patients that we were targeting. And we decided that we would bet the entire company's future and the platform's future on making sure that patients would benefit. And that sounds like, it's an obvious thing, but it's actually not that easy to do. What I mean by that is ultimately the patients are not necessarily the people who are paying for healthcare in the United States. It's insurance companies and the money flows through other mechanisms. And just because you benefit patients, it doesn't mean that actually you're going to be able to be commercially successful. But we decided that that was the pathway we wanted to take, where that is, we wanted to make sure that it was actually going to be benefiting patients. And one of the side effects of that was in constant therapy's case, our program actually has ended up being extremely usable for the kind of patients that we are serving. Just imagine somebody who is 80 years old and you expect them to use a piece of technology at home. Would you really expect them to actually independently do something with your product at home? Let alone if they have had a stroke or have some kind of a disability where they can't read or write. It turns out that they actually do. In our case, the demographic of the patients using our product, the median age is 65, so half the users are above 65, and they engage with our program for about a year, and for that is a long period of time, right? Just so 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 because of our focus on one of the biggest lessons we learned was just having that maniacal focus on the patient and making it usable for those patients has actually paid off. It has taken it took a lot of patience for it to pay off, but it did pay off. And on the commercial path, the second piece to it is how do you get paid, and that's an evolving process for us. We have been successful in getting commercializing our program through health systems as well as directly patients using our product. And the biggest lesson we've sort of learned there, in addition to focusing on the patient, we've been actually very we've also spent a lot of effort in making sure that we include the clinicians who serve our patient population as to be part of the process of actually delivering the care and also giving them the right tools to enabling the patients to succeed. So since our focus has been on the patients, because we wanted them to succeed, we recognize that the clinicians who deliver care to them were very important component of delivering that care, and that has actually allowed us to enable the the word to get out to the patient. So getting the program out to patients and having them use it, clinicians have been a huge part of that. Clinicians have been huge champions of that in constant therapy's case, and we've done that through a variety of mechanisms, including having a product for clinicians that actually really helps them deliver the absolutely outstanding care to these patients. So there's a lot of lessons learned there, but it's actually not an easy process either on the clinical validation side or on the commercial side. But I actually think that the commercial side of things is actually a lot more difficult to achieve than the clinical. Either both are difficult, but the second one is actually harder.
Well, I guess I think you covered well. Like, don't be a solution in search of a problem, because tech is very expensive to build, and you really want to know your ideal customer profile. What are you building for? Is there a business case for it? Of course, it goes without saying in healthcare. I mean, at the end of the day, hopefully you're improving the lives of patients and their families. So that's one of the things that I try to live by. Another one is learning in healthcare. I mean, you hear the stats. Well, it takes on average 17 years to bring something new into healthcare. And I thought, that's crazy. That's not real. It's probably spot on. Fortunately, we grew early by acquisition, but many companies had to run out of money in order to get the technology to keep the baton going forward. So you got to be very, very careful about, even if it's the best tech, even if it gets reimbursed, the uptake is still very slow because doctors are trained to be skeptical. And, there is no benchmark of how many thousand participants in clinical trials you've had to assess and improve and hit the endpoints. All of that can be well done. It still takes time to get into healthcare. And I like to say, I tell folks, the gates of primary care are littered with tombstones of digital health companies, because it is really hard to crack through those gates. And it takes a lot of resource to push in. But once you're in, it really starts to go. So being very mindful and resource conscious, and if you're going to go for it big. And then the third and probably final thing, for the sake of time, I would say is there's a product and there's solutions. And I think companies have to look at the solutions, and that usually, of course, involves a product if it's not a service company. But speaking just about software and SaaS, it's a product, but it needs to be supported, especially if it's something new, because our real challenge is behavioral change, and it's changing the behavior of clinicians. And they can be told some things, but they don't like to be told many things. And so getting on their side, working with them, as you described, like getting them into the process, having them promote it, it's incredibly important, is to have those folks on board in part of the process of rolling it out. And those champions are super, super important inside health systems. So those are probably the three things I would convey.
All right, I'll try and be quick. I think everything you guys said is spot on. What sort of surprised me and sort of a lesson was just how fragmented and, quite frankly, sort of narrow focused the people tend to be. I mentioned that the digital health clinical endpoint was able to get 100 to 1 or 200 to 1, whatever, return on investment. So, and it's pretty clear that that was possible years ago. And so, my original assumption was, well, then people are going to start investing in developing these things and moving them forward. Well, the problem is, in a pharmaceutical company, for instance, you have to make that investment before you even have a product, because it takes time. There's no way around that. So you don't even know if you're going to do a trial. So there's basically no money at that point. Then you've got a trial. Well, there's no time, because may be $10 million a month for delay. So you have tons of money and no time. So it's got this chicken and egg problem, and it's just because people are very, very narrowly focused on their particular job, which is maybe shouldn't have been a surprise to me, but I was kind of hoping that people would take a broader view, and so that's permeates every part. It permeates healthcare delivery everywhere. I mean, it's a truism about the world, but it's also more acute here than I've seen in other industries.
Yeah, I completely agree with the comments made. It's kind of interesting when you think of digital health, at least how I thought of it when I started. There's an interesting juxtaposition between the concept of digital, which we've come to learn as being fast and can scale widely, very quickly, reach many people, and the big lesson, at least for me, which was healthcare. And that has just so much inertia that it is very hard to reconcile those two kind of concepts together. It seemed like it was a no-brainer that we have this challenge for access to care, and now we have modern, amazing technologies that could deliver such care. The simple, naive version of me way back when was, no-brainer. Let's create this. If that was the barrier, we can solve that, and yes, it's costly, it's hard, but that's something that could be done. Build the technology, validate it, no small feat, but that seemed to me in the beginning to be the harder of the two. And the real truth of the matter is, and I think this was mentioned, is, that's probably the easier of the two problems. And so the lesson from that is you have to be very thoughtful in how you enter a technology, what problems you're solving, and you really have to think, you kind of have to innovate. I mean, you genuinely have to innovate on how these technologies will first enter and what they will do and how they will kind of spread to their full potential over time, which I think we all believe in. I think everyone is here because we believe in the notion that digital technologies could really empower us from a healthcare perspective in the future. But we have to, as a society, as as people, as industries, have to really, understand realistically what are those time frames, how do they get there, who pays for it, how do we validate these things, how do we keep up with the pace of technology? Because if it takes 17 years to validate something naturally, and you did a clinical trial 10 years ago, the technology is far more advanced and could do far more in that time. That seems silly. And so, what problem are we solving and how are we going to solve it has to be a larger conversation. And the good news is, there are hints of these things happening. It's never happening as fast as we would like, of course, but that's really kind of the big lesson, is that that's one of the most important pieces of this particular puzzle when it comes to this unique sliver of industry we call digital health.
Yeah, I think, agree with everything, and taking potentially a slightly different angle on a similar theme. I think that there's a real tension, particularly from our perspective at MedRhythms. We've gone very much regulated prescription products, so like prescription digital therapeutic or connected medical devices, and there's a really interesting dichotomy of then how you iterate and evolve technology, be that we have hardware componentry that evolves and changes over time, but also software evolution. Like, one of the great things is it's in theory very easy to quickly iterate and do incremental development on software, but you have to understand that in the context of carrying the weight of a regulated product, being very thoughtful and strategic about how you design your regulatory approach can be really important. I mean, we've been, I think, very fortunate in the United States that FDA was advanced relative to some of its global peer regulators in evolving and developing regulatory frameworks for software as a medical device or software in a medical device. Other regulators have really followed suit now. The flip side has been the case for reimbursement paradigms. Some of the global regulators and payers have been ahead of us in the United States in terms of really clarifying regulatory pathways. There are definitely pathways for reimbursement, but it's hard, as it is with any new technology. And I think, more of anyone who's thinking about approaching strategy is really making sure that there's clear understanding of the market, what the value proposition is, sort of not the solution in search of a problem, but also clear understanding of how it fits into clinical workflow and what the specifics of reimbursement are, and figure that out early, because that actually can influence approaches to development. So, there's sort of two schools of ways that technologies have sort of come to market. There are digital health technologies and digital therapeutics that started as a wellness product and said, okay, we'll get ourselves out in market as more of a wellness product or a digital health tool, and then use all of that customer base to actually create the evidence to then go substantiate and support a claim, which has some real advantages from sort of the initial investment required, because you have cash flow coming in. It can, though, then present challenges in terms of ability to substantiate pricing based on health economic value once in market. Contrasted with the alternative approach, which is start with technology, take a much more sort of start with physical clinical trials, move them through the various stages of clinical trial development, and then launch. That's often a more time-consuming and costly initial development strategy, but can, depending on condition, market being served and addressed, bear out some better from the commercialization side. So really having very strong understanding of that early is really important.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you, everyone. So we're up against the top of the hour, but unless someone looks at me weirdly, I'm going to steal about 5 minutes from our post here to ask one more question. So our provost, Ken Luchin, here at Boston University, recently wrote a pretty important paper in the Harvard Business Review talking about business and research industry partnerships. And he in the article, he says something I want to provide as a preface before I ask my question. So he says, we need to go beyond, this is researchers and industry, we need to go beyond the episodic transactional nature of typical academic industry collaborations. A new model of academic collaboration with industry is needed to allow forward-looking schools like BU to design and implement the curricular changes required to produce the graduates required by industry. And when describing the value proposition, and I paraphrase, he says, with this new model of collaboration, businesses benefit from a pipeline of well-prepared personnel, while higher ed institutions gain enviable reputations for providing them. So with that context, how would you, each of you, help us help you? Help BU help you? What training, skills, education do you wish that your employees had before they became your employees?
That's a interesting question. So the in our case, honestly, the most important skill we look for when we are hiring anybody is problem solving skills, and that can come in many different ways. And the and a lot of schools, including BU, have a pretty rigorous curriculum to enable students to really get to that place through whatever pathway they choose, right? Whatever discipline they choose. The constant therapy specifically has actually benefited a lot with various collaborations with universities as well as with clinical organizations. Maybe I can just talk about what has worked for us, and we would maybe that works for other industry university partnerships as well. So for us, we started out with corpus of research that had been done at BU and at other universities related to the what types of therapies actually work clinically had already been proven to work clinically in the area we are focused on, that is cognitive rehabilitation, and that translating that um, with the collaboration with Boston University into the into our first iterations of our program, where this was being delivered digitally. That really actually got us going in the beginning part of constant therapy. As things had evolved, what actually helped, we continue to partner with various research organizations as well as clinical organizations, whereby researchers were using our platform to actually figure out how they could deliver, or how they could study certain problems using our platform. And some of those problems happen to be what we were, what we wanted to study as a company. Some of them were not, but we encouraged that, and that really helped both the researchers as well as the students that were working there, as well as us mutually. And actually, we have now come full circle. We have so much data through our platform that we have actually started opening up that data to researchers, where people are doing their PhDs using our data to study problems that wouldn't be possible to be studied otherwise. And in these cases now, so initially it was clinical researchers as well as clinical practitioners who were collaborating with us. Now it's actually those types of students as well as professors, but also data scientists, computer scientists from places like BU who are actually working with us or working with our data to actually create new insights. So that type of partnership we think can be fruitful for other organizations as well as for BU in general.
And you asking specifically the kind of student.
The kind of employee you wish you had
Employee.
that BU could produce.
So I'll draw a parallel from states of physics. In order to do work, you got to have a kind of potential energy that becomes kinetic and becomes mechanical energy. It does work. What I find too often, depending on the school they come from, is a lot of them have potential energy. They're very thoughtful, but they don't move. And then others, depending on their background, they just move. But they don't get any work done. It's not very thoughtful. And so it's really bringing it all together to where they're considering, but they're action-oriented, and they drive work forward, they execute. Because ideas, especially in this day and age, they're a dime a dozen. It's who can execute. And so, figuring out programs that really not only, internships and get people to work, but who's accountable? Who's going to grab the reins and drive this thing in? And who's open to constructive criticism and feedback and doesn't play the victim all the time and can engage in a dialogue and give that professional feedback, give that direct feedback, but not be attacking the person, but just putting the work on the table and constructively criticizing that and being able to respond and being able to vigorously defend their position. But if logic convinces them otherwise, they let it go, because that's how we learn. And I do feel like the higher education system is not putting that package together as it formerly did or could do. And so I hope that we learn from current situations and really equip our students to, yes, be thoughtful, but be action-oriented and be very focused on execution and getting the work done.
All right, I'm going to hopefully go quick. I think we need people who are generalists who can rise above and look at things. So people who have a broader range of experience, but also some specific skills. So I think you've got to merge that. And finally, I think every person should have a finance/accounting course so that they can understand some of this. The realities are the money is what drives things, and you need to figure out, how to work within that system as opposed to, ignoring it.
Yes, I completely agree. I love the analogy of the potential energy to kinetic energy transition. That's what I think of as this magic spark of individual contributor. And so I completely agree there. The thing that comes to mind, kind of based on my own experiences, which is, from perhaps the student's perspective, is it's often the case that, students, though they have the interest, they're in school pursuing a degree or graduate school and doing research or whatever it might be, they might not yet have latched onto the idea or the mission that really drives them. And so there is this kind of two-sided marketplace problem. It's like you have companies that need amazingly talented individual contributors, and then you have pools of amazingly talented young individuals who, are pursuing some concept, maybe studying math or physics or English or whatever it might be. And the two might not, the marketplace for that matchmaking might not be efficient. And so the thing that I think about with respect to digital health, which is kind of in our DNA, we're a team of academics, and research and education pursuit of this knowledge was foundational to where we are today. And also we are we believe very deeply that we don't have the final answer here, that this final answer is going to continue to evolve over this very long trajectory of the evolution of digital health. And a lot of that accumulation is happening in the university setting with young young students who are coming to this naively, who have new ideas and pursue ideas. And we take that very seriously at React. We have a whole program we call React Research Kit. Basically make the whole technology and our services and the machine learning pipelines, these robust things, as well as all the quality management control, all the FDA regulatory, all the complexities that maybe a young graduate student or a young faculty member might not be interested, hopefully is not interested in pursuing those, head-banging ideas. We allow to kind of centralize that into a separate process that can then create environments for just natural curiosity-driven explorations and research studies, whether they're aligned with our kind of commercial roadmaps or not. This benefits, the entire community from a knowledge perspective, but then also creates opportunities to take, a young person with an idea doing a, master's thesis on a topic and perhaps discover something that might have meaningful real-world implications in a certain clinical condition or in the real world. And if we can kind of make those systems more efficient, then I think we can accelerate this adoption, which then I think yields positive feedback circuits.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with, I think, a lot that's been said here. I almost wanted to like start this with a poll or like a query of the audience. Who, raise your hand if you know what an API is. Yeah. Okay, anybody want to go? Go ahead. Answer, anybody, API? What is it?
Don't make you look bad.
I saw a lot of hands go up. Okay, I'll find out.
Application programming interface?
Sure. Or is it an active pharmaceutical ingredient? And I think the point being here is, particularly, a lot of us in these digital health companies, we're smaller entities. So it's not that you're coming in, perhaps on an engineering team and working with 100 other engineers. There's a lot of cross-pollination. And so that understanding of, where everyone is coming from in terms of, what does it look like to work in a digital health organization? What are those functions? Who will we be working with? For example, MedRhythms, we have front-end engineers, full stack audio engineers, but we also you have quality, you have regulatory, clinical development, commercialization. And so, I think if we were thinking about sort of what someone, coming in as individual contributor, recent graduate is, don't expect them to be an expert or have, full understanding of, someone who's coming from the healthcare background, but getting a good understanding of like what it means to work in those sort of cross-functional, multidisciplinary organizations. Because I know I've certainly had to learn. I didn't know anything about Agile, coming in from healthcare side. So that's been a big learning for me moving into more of a technology space. And so, I think some of that just really good foundational industry knowledge can be really helpful to someone who's just beginning their career.
So excellent. I really appreciate the emphasis on the intangibles across all the panelists, not MATLAB. So that will conclude this first part of the event today. Maria, do you have any final words? So we will have food in the back and an opportunity to interact with the panelists as well as with each other in this community. I really encourage folks to hang around and take advantage of that. So thank you all, and welcoming thanking our panelists for being with us tonight. Thank you.